Hello, everybody. I hope you are doing well. I am um, coming to you tonight to talk to you guys about how to build a chronicle in V6. I know a lot of people have experience building chronicles in various editions of World of Darkness and also building campaigns in various editions of other TTRPGs like D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, pick your poison. But I've been very adamant as of recently about people not using the not in my domain scenario that came with the players packet and storytellers packets, and you can get it all on drive-through. I'm using Demiplane because that's what I use for all the games I run. Um, but like I said, I've been very adamant in the last couple streams and interacting with some groups on the Facebook about not using not my domain because it doesn't give the full experience in a scenario like that. It's designed to bring in people generally who don't either have experience with the game. You're trying to get that player base grown, or people who have some exposure to the game, whether through other editions or whatever, and are curious to learn more. It's also designed to be ran mostly at something like a con, like Gen Con, Con Carolinas, whatever, Dragon Con. Um, and because of that, there's very tight, uh, tight scene management. You know, you're really kind of trying to move because you only have a limited time at a con to play through a scenario. And I know everybody wants to try to get through it and try to get as much as they can out of it, but it's just not designed for showing off what the system is. So I did run it. I ran it 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago, whatever. I think I ran it the weekend after Gen Con, or maybe, yeah, the weekend after Gen Con. As soon as they released the packets, I ran it that weekend. So whatever weekend that was, 2 weekends ago, I guess. Um, and it was fine. Um, I ran it well enough that some of the players who started playing with me in V5 and they hadn't played any of the other editions, uh, they started playing with me in V5. We all really liked V5, and they were reading the rules for this new edition in the alpha test, and they were saying things they didn't think they would like and stuff like that. But by the end of not my domain that I was running, um, they were saying that they liked the system, and they didn't feel as um, cautious about it. So, and I'm not saying that because I'm such an amazing storyteller. It's just I I really wanted to put the system through its paces, and I didn't know I would be running a chronicle of my own. So I added some other things to the not in my domain. I made sure that there were some opportunities for frenzy. Made sure there were opportunities to move the humanity tracker. Made sure there were opportunities for drama, beast, um, painful failures, and that came up anyway. That comes up all the time at our tables. Devil's Bargain, all that stuff. And I even got to sort of the social combat. So, and I didn't use the social combat rules. Excuse me. I didn't use the social combat rules very much in V5. Really, the only time I use social combat rules is when the conversation at the table, either between me and a player, an NPC and a player, or players versus players, when it becomes circular and it's not going anywhere. they just keep going around the same point, just in different ways. At that point, then I go to the social combat rules, and whoever wins that wins the argument. But I generally don't start with the social combat rules. So I ran the not my domain, and then it turned out they wanted to play again that next week. So put together a chronicle, and I think my players had much more fun in my chronicle that continued from not my domain, from what I built there. And they also got to experience a lot more of the rules. And I think the key to giving this a fair shake in alpha is to create your own chronicle. And I mentioned this at the end of my last stream yesterday. Create your own chronicle. Don't use not my domain. Just throw that away. It's only 18 pages. It's not even half the size of the storyteller's packet. But create your own chronicle. Shoot for like 8 to 12 hours. So you can break it up into 3-4 hour games if you want, or do 8 hours and break it up into 2 4-hour games. I think I mentioned in my stream the other day, Gentleman Gamer ran a great, I think it was 2, might have been 2, maybe 3. I have to go look. Game chronicle of Dark Ages Vampire 20th Anniversary Edition. I think it's called Crown of Thorns. You can go to his channel and check it out. And it was a great little, 3-game chronicle. I think each game lasted maybe 3 hours, maybe. Again, I have to go look, and I encourage you to go look. Check out the Gentleman Gamer. But I really think that for V6 to get a good feel for the rules and the system as they are right now, because it's alpha, they're going to change some. You need to run your own chronicle with it. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, here on Demiplane, now you can download all this on drive-thru, but I'm using Demiplane. So we're going to go to the rules here. And so here you see the player's packet. This is everything you need to play the game. All the rules, all that stuff, that's all right here. Next to the storyteller's packet, and this is what I want to focus on first, okay? So we'll crack into the storyteller's packet, go down here, and chapter 1, storytelling. Now this is a big one. If you want your players to move the beast or nature tracker, then you've got to give them opportunities to do that. You have to put things in their way to do that. It can come from things that you make up, or it can come, it can come from things like chronicle themes. Now, these are in the storyteller's packet. If you haven't read the storyteller's packet, you probably don't know shit about this. But these act like chronicle tenets from V5. Okay, they give you a short little description of the theme, and then monstrous acts, which if you do indulge in, will move your beast tracker, and mortal acts, which will move your mortal tracker. And then they've got experience points. I highly recommend for your chronicle to not use experience points, because your characters will probably not get to advance very much for an 8 to 12 hour chronicle. Okay, highly recommend using the improvement mechanics for advancing your character, which are also in the storyteller's packet. Every improvement they get dots and stuff. Every 3 improvement they get a bigger boost, and every 5 improvement points they get an even bigger boost. Okay, that will give them much more of a feeling of advancing and feeling like their characters are growing a little bit. And it's also, you don't have to do the experience point thing. I've said in other streams, I do not like, I don't like, and haven't liked for years, the experience point costs. And the experience points, I should have grabbed. Ooh, I should have grabbed a cup of coffee. I don't like the experience points and the experience points cost and all that. I never have for any of the systems in World of Darkness. They're just I just don't like them. It's just a personal thing. If you like them, by all means use them. But I highly suggest if you do use them to give your characters a little bit more at the end of each of your games, so that they get a little bit more of a feel of moving forward. Okay, so for my chronicle, which is set in Chicago, I set not my domain in Chicago, um, and I built off of not my domain. So if you're not doing a skeleton, building it off of a skeleton like that, then I suggest first settling on a theme. Okay, that will help drive your character's humanity trackers. Okay, whatever theme you want it to be. Um, you can talk to your players about it, or you can just say, hey, I want to try these rules. I'm going to run this. The theme of this game is blah. And then make characters. Help them make characters. Go through character creation with them. Demiplane has a great character creator for Worlds of Darkness. I'll pop off the storyteller stuff real quick. I've got 3 made, but you can very easily just hop in and make a character. I highly suggest, I've said this before, do it on your tablet or on your computer. It can be more difficult on your phone. You got to turn your phone left and right here and there throughout the process, but it's doable. And if you've got experience with Demiplane and doing it on the phone, then you're good to go. But I highly suggest doing it on your computer or your tablet. And you can always come over here, if you hit the little 3 bars up top, you can come over here and I can export it to PDF. And got to make sure the pop-ups are allowed. I don't know that mine are. We'll see. Anyways, you can also share it. Nope, it was blocked. So we're going to go up here and always allow pop-ups. There we go. So there we go. Now I'm going to export it. And give it just a minute. And you'll see the character sheet. So here's Seraphine Vale's Gangrel character sheet. Okay. Now I didn't fill in every single thing because I was just going through this really quick. So I didn't put her curse in or her archetype or any of that. But up here are attributes. Here's your beast, your humanity tracker. There's your humanity tracker right there. My nature, my beast, my life paths, all that stuff's written over here on the side. All my traits, rifle and knife, just cause, and my disciplines. And that's it. It's just one page. And I could put a picture here if I want to. And then my skills have their focuses already in them. So there's my 3 dots or whatever. And your resources. Okay? So you could do all this from Demiplane and then print this off, which is what I would do. I would have the Demiplane stuff and I'd print this off. Okay? So back to our storytellers packet here. So pick a theme. I knew for my chronicle that I was going to build on the coterie having a little domain. Okay, and in the scenario that they give you, it's just you're just told you've got a small domain in a city, just like a generic city. Well, I set mine in Chicago. They did the warehouse stuff, and then when they met with the prince, who in my continuity is Annabelle, because I never really liked Jackson. I liked Annabelle a lot more. So Annabelle's the prince in my continuity. When they met with her at the end, the hounds took her there, and they met with her, and they called out a spy and other stuff. She gave them a larger domain, 32 blocks, South Shore in Chicago. Now there are other. I've populated that with other kindred who are in their domain, but not necessarily under their authority because they were there beforehand. And that drives your political drama and just your general tension, or at least it does in mine. Created several locations, several NPCs. I shared some of those yesterday in my stream, and I populated my thing. And then I knew I wanted to have a couple. Um, I knew I wanted to have a couple like main kind of hooks that I wanted in my chronicle. So I've got one that is centered on a major NPC from Chicago by Night. I have one centered kind of dancing around a possible masquerade breach for Anna Reynolds, who is one of the humans that survived out of not in my domain in my game that I ran. She survived and Arthur survived. Um, and then I have another hook and story arc that's built around um, the hunters and some gangs, and they just started exploring some of the gang stuff, not very much. They kind of really fell hard into the Anna um, hook. So you want to have your chronicle theme, your chronicle kind of skeleton. I don't do chronicles by laying out step by step by step what needs to happen. Because World of Darkness just doesn't do that. Because the players have so much freedom and they have so much. It's cooperative storytelling. So you have to try to not be upset when the chronicle doesn't go exactly the way you want it to go because you're cooperatively doing this. Your players are going to throw curveballs and things are going to change. Now that happens in other games too, but generally you're more on a little bit more on rails on the other games. I'm not saying you're just dedicated to one track. I mean, there's variants, but especially in a sandbox game like Curse of Strahd or House of Strahd or whatever the hell it is now. That's a very sandboxy game where you can do all kinds of stuff. So I would say House of Strahd is probably the of what I've played of D&D and ran of D&D is probably the most sandboxy of them all. So I've get you think about a couple hooks and things like that, and whatever city you're running in. I highly suggest doing a city you're either familiar with or a city that you live in or have lived in. And you want to start small. Okay, you don't think about the whole city and don't think about every kindred or mortal that may be in the city because that's just too much. You will just lose your mind doing that shit. So don't do that. Focus on, Chicago by Night 5th edition does a great job of talking about like homesteads and things like that. Not the whole city, just a block, maybe 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 10 blocks, whatever. Just think of a small area of the city that you are going to run this chronicle in, and then start filling that area out with maybe some things on the periphery, just in case the players decide to go out of bounds a little bit. And you can have NPCs or whatever out there on the periphery that can help kind of guide them back. Or if it just goes in a different direction, then that's when you, as a storyteller, need to kind of be quick with your wit, quick with your thinking, and adapt. And the more you do it, the more you storytell, the quicker and easier that will become. I'm almost always storytelling. Um, Now I just finished playing in about a year, almost a year and a half, I guess. Vampire 5th edition game that a friend of mine was running. So that was nice. I didn't have to storytell. Another friend in our group is running D&D. It's also something that I like, but I'm not storytelling. I'm not DMing it, and that's nice. Gives me a break from doing that. Although I love storytelling. It's my favorite thing to do. Um, so you think of your city or your blocks or 5 blocks or whatever, 10 blocks, whatever your size is, and then start putting together some SPCs. The main SPCs or NPCs that you want to focus on, okay? And then think about your theme. What's the theme going to be? In my game, I'm bouncing between intrigue and loyalty and information and power. And we haven't as a group really talked about themes yet, just because we're really still kind of feeling out the rules. But grab you a theme and build your thing, your chronicle around that to start with. All right. Once you have a setting. You know, you've got your 10 city blocks or whatever. Um, then start, and you've got your theme that gives you a direction, kind of it gives your chronicle a moral umbrella, and it also gives you as a storyteller and your players as players, characters, guidance on what the general idea of the chronicle is going to be like. Remember, you're only running like a 12-hour chronicle, but you want to showcase all the rules. Okay, so after that, I would say hit up. Um, don't worry about drama right now. We'll talk about drama in a little bit. I talked about it a ton the other night. Um, get off of that. Storyteller triggers. I would suggest making a couple of these. This will help you, um, as a storyteller, kind of outline a little bit of what is going to be happening in your story. So you set the scene for your players. You let them know, that the scene's begun. You set it up, and then you let them go. Let them go for just a little bit. Okay, you don't want to jump them right into a plot or something like that. Let them role play. Let them feel out the setting. Let them meet some NPCs, and builds a little bit of relationships. But if you have a story trigger outline like this, then when you're ready, you can introduce things that start pushing events. Okay, so like omens, the PC's experience here about C, and so on, signs and hints of the story triggers activity and presence, showing the PCs that something is going on without directly affecting them. Okay, so they hear a rumor, they get information from some source, they see something, whatever. Okay, it's just something that kind of, after they've had some time to get into the setting some, then you can use this omen. All right, then you have a minor event. PC experience minor activities related to the story's triggers. Okay, plans in these events might affect the PCs in some tangential way. So on the edges, threats from these events should be difficulty or NPC level 2 or lower. All right, these should be things that start piquing your character's interest. Okay, little things that are easy to figure out or overcome, but they will have greater significance later. Um, Kind of like in Kung Pao. If you've seen Kung Pao, Way of the Fist, there's a scene where they talk about stars above, and then they talk about aliens, and then the voiceover says, "Oh, stars above, was I right?" But you didn't know what that was until later in the movie. Something like that. And that's a humorous example, but it's just an example. Then mild events. They experience mild events that affect the PCs in some way, causing consequences in their domain, okay? And threatening their resources. Threats from these events should be difficulty or NPC level 3 or lower. So now, the events that you kicked off previously, now these events are a little bit more pressing. And they're starting to pressure the PCs, the characters, into acting, okay? When you get to the major event, that's when the main arc of the story is going to take off. Okay, so you can let your chronicle kind of slow burn for the first session, especially if you're running 3 sessions. That whole first session should be just them getting to know the NPCs, getting to know their setting, getting to know the NPCs on the periphery of wherever they are, getting comfortable with the rules, getting comfortable with the all the mechanics, all that shit. That's your first session. It's filling out and letting them tell you. I highly encourage you, if you're building a chronicle, not only to come up with your theme, your location, and NPCs, all that stuff. And coming up with NPCs is a breeze, um, very quick. It's not like you're statting out all stats on a character sheet for every NPC you have. Now, I have a friend, Doc Fortune, whenever we played his mage game, he statted out everybody. And I think in the few vampire games he's ran for me, he's statted out at least anyone that I was gonna be interacting with, in any major way. He had fully statted out. I generally don't do that, and And the new system plays into, for me, what I like about NPCs. I can just quickly put one together, and it's good to go. So I encourage you though to let your players build locations too. As you're playing through that first session, ask them leading questions. Ask them questions about where do you go, what do you do on a night in this type of city. Where is I put locations in. I think I created, I don't know. I'd have to go look, maybe 10 locations, 10 or 12 major locations that the players would interact with on a regular basis, like a bar, a hospital, funeral home, diner, market, um, you know, university place, any of that stuff. I created several locations, but let the players tell you where their haven is, what kind of haven it is, if it's a group haven, if it's not a group haven. Let your players fill in the world some for you, because then they're invested in it. And that's what you want, and that's what makes World of Darkness so interesting, is that it's got a lot of player buy-in. If I'm playing Forgotten Realms, a game set in the Forgotten Realms, you can create your own little village and all that stuff. But generally, like, Baldur's Gate is Baldur's Gate. Everything's kind of set, especially if you're playing in a city type of campaign. Playing at Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, any of those places. Icewind Dale, whatever. Those locations are pretty much set. So in World of Darkness, your players have the opportunity to help you build the setting. Every game almost. If a new location pops up, ask the player, "Hey, where do you think this is?" And if you don't like what they're saying, or if you want it to be a little different, then bat it around for 5 or 10 minutes and just come to a consensus about what it is you guys are after. And most of the time, the people playing with you want to play the game. So they're not going to just be generally obstinate and assholes and not, meet you in the middle somewhere if you guys are all disagreeing on locations of things. So let your players, in that first session, help you build your setting. So by the time you get to those mild events, and major events, that major event probably needs to kick off near the end of the second session. If you are, um, running 3 sessions, um, if you aren't, if you're only running 2 sessions, then that major event, and you don't feel, looking at the story triggers, don't feel constrained to them. You're not tied to them at all. These are just good ways of kind of giving you some like pacing, so that you don't get too sucked into just tangents. Okay, because you do want to explore all the rules and things like that, and you want to have a chronicle that's going to be short enough that it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you're playing only a 2 session chronicle, then you want that major mild event to kick off closer to the end of the first session, or the very beginning of the second session. So you spend your first session, you know, doing a lot of exploration, and they're helping you build a setting and all that stuff. By the end of that first session, you want to have that mild event go off. They deal with it a little bit and handle it in the beginning of the second session, and then the major event goes off, and they're really sucked into the story then. And then you finish off with whatever the final event's going to be, and that's that. But do not feel constrained to this in any way, shape, or form. This is just an outline, okay? At the end of every session, I would highly suggest, it tells you here about when to gain improvements. You gain 1 improvement at the end of every session. A longer session or session in which a significant event can happen, you can award extra improvement to the storyteller's discretion. Improvements are a fabulous system. I really like them. If I ran a different system of Vampire, I'd probably still use improvements over experience points. Um, so make sure you're giving your players improvements. If you want them to feel out a little bit more of the system, you can give them an improvement or two at the beginning of the game so that their characters have a little bit more experience. Um, so you've got your chronicle theme, you've got your chronicle location, you've got some NPCs. Let's talk about the NPCs real quick. So I want to make sure you see how easy it is to whip up NPCs. All right, NPCs. So you got your name, the level of the thing, uh, tier, which is like minions, normal, elite, whatever. Um, they get willpower, they get health, and then they get weapons, whatever that is. All the NPCs that have been published thus far, I think, have like a ranged and a melee weapon. All right, and then 3 or 4 special abilities. Okay, here's an example one: a starving wight. Weapons, claws. That's what it is. Okay, I've seen people complain is like, oh, all the vampires have guns now. Well, no, they don't have to. Now I will tell you, when I started playing Vampire, seriously, Snatch had come out, and Desert Eagles were just this crazy joke. It was a meme, essentially. So it seemed like every vampire character we ever made at that time had a Desert Eagle. It's like, you got embraced. Hey, you're immortal. Here's your blood bag. Here's your Desert Eagle. Um, it was just funny. I guess you had to be there. I don't know. But anyways, a standard white NPC, 9 health, 9 willpower. He's got claws, and here are his abilities. He's got acute senses. Any test made to deceive him suffers a -1 dice. So if somebody is trying to sneak around or use an illusion or whatever, they suffer -1 dice to the penalty of that. So that means if they're going against this white, the difficulty is 4 for their roll. So they lose 4 dice out of their dice pool. Once per scene, the white deals 2 additional damage with a melee attack. Okay, it just gets to do it. And then it gets, better climbing. And monstrous. The white has lost humanity, and these social tests are harder. Okay? So that's an example NPC. Now you can whip these things up pretty quickly. Here it talks about the level. And how your difficulty and all that. How to build that. And then making tests for NPCs. You might decide to roll the dice. Now, here's how you. I know some people are kind of miffed. Isn't the right word? They feel a little left out because they're not rolling dice as storytellers. You can absolutely do that. You can absolutely roll your dice in order to have some randomness with your NPCs or whatever. Okay. You can decide to roll dice for any NPC for any of the following reasons, and there are innumerable reasons. These are just examples. How well the NPC will perform in a certain situation. Pit 2 NPCs against each other. To show the NPC has a bigger role in the chronicle than others might. To make an encounter more unique, increase tension through a contested test. Dice pool for an NPC is equivalent to twice its difficulty. So a level 3 NPC has 6 dice. Okay. And then it just, breaks it down, gives you some examples, okay? So you got minions. They are really easy to deal with. Then you got your standard NPC, and health or willpower is equal to the level times 3. Elites, these are your princes and city leaders. And health and willpower, it just breaks down how to create an NPC, okay? And then it breaks down conflicts with them. So, after you've got your chronicle together, you've got your NPCs together, you've got your locations together, you got your chronicle theme together, okay, and you've gone through character creation, make sure you let your players know the kind of chronicle you're shooting for and the theme that you're using, or you're shooting for, and be willing to give and take a little with your players. If everybody's just absolutely against um, the whatever loyalty and dishonor theme or whatever it was, then be willing to switch it up. Maybe switch out some of the maybe come up with your own monstrous and nature tracker triggers, but be willing to switch those things up. Um, and again, it might seem more difficult if you've never ran your own chronicle before. It might seem a little intimidating if you are running this V6 stuff for the first time and you're so used to running a different edition, whether it's V5, most recent edition, or V20 or whatever, second or first edition, if those are your jams. But you're wanting to try this, and this can seem it can definitely seem different, even from V5, but not so much if you played Hunter. If you played Hunter 5th Edition, this whole NPC thing is going to seem really familiar. And I think so will the drama and quickening mechanic, because it resembles a lot of the danger and desperation mechanic. In so much as the danger mechanic or desperation mechanic, I think, allows the hunters to gain extra dice at the chance of bad things happening, based on what they're doing. So it might seem a little different, but once you have all that together and you've gone through character creation with your players, help them come up with stuff for the setting, then let's go back here to our storyteller's packet. Then start thinking about your big bad, I guess is what I would say. I tend to start out thinking about them first, and then I build kind of waterfalling down from them. It's easier for me to have a clear image of what the goal is of the main antagonist for the players. So I don't want to spoil it for any of my players if they haven't to watch this. But one of the main antagonists for my whole game is a main character out of Chicago by Night. And I thought about, okay, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? Why are they here in the player's domain unbeknownst to the players? And then I started building the chronicle around that. Okay, all the way back to their presentation to the prince. I built the chronicle all the way back to that. So for me, it's generally easier for me to see it from the antagonist and work my way back. And then that gives me an end point. And then the starting point is wherever we start from. I like to have a skeleton. So think like I want to go A to D, but I'm not going to really flesh out a whole lot of B and C, because that's where the players are doing the cooperative storytelling. Okay, I've given them the chronicle. We've talked about themes. I've maybe dropped some rumors. That's another important thing. You can use your storyteller triggers if you want to put rumors in that or whatever. I drop rumors in that first session so they have some hooks they can chase. I often, if I'm running a big chronicle, I often create in Discord, or I write up a radio show called The Nightcrawler. And I shamelessly stole that from Forever Night, because Lucien Lacroix is one of my favorite vampire characters ever. And he has this radio show called The Nightcrawler, where he talks about vampiric issues, but it's in metaphor and it's mass, so the mortals don't pick up on it. And he takes calls and things like that. So I usually use something like that, either through Discord if it's going to be a major like chronicle, like a long chronicle, or I just write up something at the beginning of each game. So if you're running this to test the rules and you're running a 4 or 3 game shot of this that you're creating, then I would suggest that at the beginning of each of the games have a Nightcrawler session or have a radio session or a podcast, like a kindred influencer session where um, a local kindred influencer is dropping some clues about what's going on in the background of the player's setting. Okay, remember in V6, technology isn't as verboten as it was in V5. Okay, with the advent of AI and fake news and all that, shit, um, vampires can be a little bit freer with technology now, which, makes sense. I like that. Um, and they use technology like use some of their disciplines. But remember, none of this is new. There have been powers in previous editions that have allowed Kindred to use disciplines through machines and phones and all that shit. So um, you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but the general setting is that technology isn't the bane of Kindred existence like it was in V5. Okay, so have a Kindred influencer drop hints and rumors for you, and then let the players in those middle session that B and C section I talked about play the game and explore the hooks and all that stuff. Um, and then you have to decide how you're going to conclude everything. Are you going to do it on a uh, cliffhanger? So you're open for additional sessions, which I like to do because I never know when I'm going to come back to a chronicle idea. I never know if I never know finding a yawn. Fuck. I never know if I am going to hear something or see something or whatever. Something inspires me, and I want to I say, "Ooh, man, that would be great for another story in this chronicle." And so then I start working on it again. I start from scratch again. I have my antagonist or whatever, and then I work my way back. You might want to work your way forward. Okay, you might not have a clear antagonist. Um, hey, thanks, Doc Fortune. You may not have a clear antagonist at the beginning, um, but as your players interact with NPCs, one of those NPCs may end up becoming the antagonist based on what your players do, and they don't have to know that. Okay, we don't have to once our players piss off somebody in our game, we don't have to put a big neon sign with an arrow pointing at them as the bad guy. Vampires are not generally impatient, I don't think. At least I don't see them that way. You might piss one off and they might let you cool your heels for a little bit before they come after you. And that's kind of part of the horror of it for me, too. Is they don't have to get you tomorrow or the next day or the next year or in 10 years. They can wait until you've forgotten that this small little slight. And some vampires are just petty enough that even a small slight gets them riled up and makes them want to, end you. So you may not have a clear antagonist in the beginning. That's okay. Pay attention to who your players piss off, who they disrespect, who they help, and then let one of those NPCs become an antagonist. If your players are neonates in that neonate tier, I'd suggest having your main NPCs and possible antagonists be um, level 3, with maybe a signature ability that bumps their difficulty up by 1 when they use it. If they are a little higher, if they're like Ancilla, then maybe level 4, even level 5, depending on what's going on in your chronicle. It's your chronicle. You sort out how hard you want it to be. And that's going to bring me to drama. Okay, you can use the drama system, which your players give you, to introduce things, move things along, spice up your NPCs, spice up scenes in which your characters are uh, are dealing with a hard situation. You know, something in an Elysium, something in a college dorm, something in a nightclub or a bar, whatever. Using drama does two things. One, it helps to give you a reason to jump in there and change something, spice it up, whatever, without it um, feeling like you're barging into what they're doing. So what I've been doing is, as my players have been talking and role playing, if something catches like my attention and I'm like, ooh, I want to do something with this, then I just tell them I'm going to go ahead and spin a drama, but I don't tell them what for. I don't say, oh, I'm going to spin a drama to blah right now. I just say I'm going to spin a drama, and they immediately all go, oh my god, what's going on? Like, quite literally, that's what some of them say. Like, oh gosh. Um, because number one, I'm keeping the suspense because I'm not telling them what I'm doing with it. Now, after last game, because I blew through all my drama there in the last scene of the game, and really made our poor Nosferatu's life hell. Part of it was her fault. She opened the can, but I made it much harder than it might could have been. Um, but at the end of the game, I was like, well, I had all this drama because of what you know uh, Singh did earlier, or because so and so failed a role and they gave me drama. Um, I made sure they knew that I wasn't just like pulling it out of thin air, that I was using the mechanics to make stuff happen, and they appreciate that, I think, and they enjoy the system. So use drama to move your game along. Use it to introduce, introduce, or not introduce, but to break kind of stale moments. That's where you can use your drama to move your story triggers. You can use the drama to introduce a new NPC, introduce a new situation, whatever. And again, you don't have to use drama at all. Okay, you can just do all of this stuff without drama. But for me, I like the drama system because it is another way for me to be involved in the story and to be interact with the players. And there's the tension, the push pull of tension between them gaining quickening and failing rolls and giving me drama, and me using that drama to heighten the game in various ways. Okay, so you've got your chronicle together, you've got your players together, you've got your setting together, and your players have helped you with it. Characters are together. You've got your NPCs. You either know who your main antagonist is, or you're planning on using an NPC you introduce as a main antagonist. And yeah, if you're playing with people you can anticipate who is going to be the NPC that they don't like. Okay, when I play with when we play at do KinCons and we play with our friend Clever Crow, that dude is always trying to be the most noble and honorable, chivalrous person in the game, no matter what we're playing. Okay, it's just he tries to find a way to just be the most noble dude at the table, which opens the door for easy um, antagonist and baiting him, because all we have to do is put some type of feminine or damsel in distress type thing or honorable situation type thing, whatever, and he's hooked. And I know if I know which NPC to do that with. Okay, so if you know your players, then you'll be able to figure out which NPC they're going to really not like, and play up the NPCs that way. One of the great things I think about the way the system is going right now, and me not having to roll dice, is that I don't have to think about my players or my NPCs. Excuse me, I don't have to think about my NPC stats and how many dice I need to roll, and I don't need to take a break to go, ooh, how many dice do I have to roll for this, and get a dice pool together. I can just focus on role playing my NPCs to the best that I am able to do. Okay, so I know I have a note that says this NPC generally is this way. So I have a baseline of how they generally act, and then I get to just focus on that as opposed to breaking my involvement in the game by figuring out dice for myself. I don't care about that. Um, this gives me a much more of an opportunity to be involved in the role play myself, um, instead of just getting to the next dice roll. So introduce your NPCs, role player NPCs out, and you'll figure out which ones the players don't like and want to deal with, and then adjust your chronicles overarching goal around that NPC. Um, so let's see. I'm trying not to give a whole lot away about my chronicle, just like I said, just in case my players watch. Um, but I have a couple NPCs that are directly linked to the um, to one of the main events of the main antagonist, who would eventually be the main antagonist. Um, and so as they get to know those NPCs, they're gonna start realizing some of this stuff. I hope. Um, so anyway, that's how I'm doing it with that. Um, Devil's bargains. Whew. I highly suggest when your players fail rolls, but they're not painful failures. Absolutely, every time that happens in my game, I say, "Do you want a devil's bargain?" Because a lot of times players just forget, and they, um, they just say, "Oh well, I failed," and they just go on with their lives. But they don't have to do that. They can take the devil's bargain, and um, that that gives them, first of all, um, that gives you yet another avenue to um, bring in story stuff, because devil's bargains are kind of, you succeed at a cost. So I succeed at what I'm doing, but something bad is going to happen. Okay, um, maybe a masquerade breach, or maybe um, a casualty, a human casualty of some sort, or kindred find out about what's going on and they try to interfere, whatever. You know, you got to sometimes be a little quick on the uptake. You got to be a little quick sometimes on the on the on your toes to pivot and be able to just quickly come up with something in game, for a devil's bargain. But remember also that as a consequence. But also remember, it's devil's bargains are conversations between you and the player as well. So the first devil's bargain I did with my Nosferatu player, she failed a stealth roll. She really wanted to pass the stealth roll. I said, "Well, give me a devil's bargain. What do you what consequence should happen, or what complication? Complication is generally better if you're going to say something. Complication is Consequences tend to make the players avoid, I think, anything that's going to be detrimental to them. And I'm not saying that they do that purposefully, like because they are, trying to be meta or cheese the system. I've played with players who are like that, but you can carve that out real quick. And by just saying no, you just fail or whatever. But if you say complication, what's a complication in the scene that you're going to allow you to succeed at this role to gain a basic success, but is going to make the scene more spicy or more difficult for you and or your coterie. So when she failed her stealth roll, and I said, "Give me a devil's bargain. What complication should we introduce?" And she looked at the minister player, Sings, and she was like, "Sing's phone rings." And Sing goes, "Oh man, my phone's starting." I was like, "No, no, no, it doesn't ring right now. You're good." But when he was trying to be sneaky, or when something was going on and he needed to not be distracted, that's when I had his phone ring, and it was great. It made the scene better. Everybody was happy with it. So I encourage you to use complication more than you say consequence or something like that, because complication is going to help the players want to help you storytell and help you come up with, like I said, cool things that are going to, be exciting or heroic or horrific or dramatic or whatever. Um, Quickenings and painful failures are another great way to enhance your chronicle. So quickenings just allow your players to spend quickening to get an extra die on a die roll. Okay, um, and they can spend as much as they want, but they have a limit of 5 quickening. Okay, if they get more quickening than 5, then they have to mark off either a square in their beast or a square in their nature tracker as the quickening spills over and it riles up their natures. Okay, that is another way you're going to see the humanity mechanic move about in the game. You want If you want your players to see and experience the mechanics of the new humanity system, whether it's the monstrous or the mortal side, and each side has benefits and penalties based on how far into each side you go. But if you want them to experience those things, you've got to give them the opportunities to do it. So you got to that's why the themes are so important at the beginning of your chronicle, because they are yet another way that player choices and agency can move them up and down the humanity track. And your nature track and your beast track, and therefore your humanity track, they're going to move a lot. They should. They should be getting dots in all of those. They should be marking off pieces of beast and pieces of nature throughout the game. And they don't get to do that the um, the playtest scenario. It just isn't designed for that. So the more opportunities you put in there for them to either indulge their nature or their monstrous side, then they're going to have a lot more fun interacting with that new humanity system. So with quickening, to go back to that real quick, like I said, if they have more than 5, any extra quickening they get, and they get a quickening for every 10 they roll. So they're just gonna start spilling over, and they're gonna want to start spending it. They can spend as much quickening as they want or as they have to get extra dice on a dice roll. They can spend 3 quickening to gain a basic success on a skill check that they have skill dots in. So if they have, if they're shooting at something and they're doing Dex plus shooting or composure plus shooting, then they um, then they can spend quickening to get a basic success on that roll and not have to roll. If they have 5 quickening, they can spend 5 quickening to gain a basic success on a skill test that they don't have dots in. Um, that is a great way for them to be able to manipulate the story. And you, as a storyteller in your chronicle, need to be encouraging the players to do that. There is a great quick sheet rules reference guide. It's 1 page, 3 columns. It's like a mini storyteller screen. And that's got everything that I'm talking about on it rules-wise. Quickening, devil's bargain, painful choices, okay, painful failures. This is another way that you can move things along in your game. So, painful failures and painful choices happen when your players roll no successes and a 1. So for those of us familiar with older editions of Vampire, that's going to be like botching, rolling no successes and a botch and a 1. Okay, so what happens when they get those painful failures? They get to choose their pain. They can lose 3 vitae or 3 willpower. And remember, your character's vitae is tied to their health. It's not just like blood points anymore. Okay? And though that vitae can be sapped away by combat, by discipline use, by rousing, whatever. Blood surges All of that uses the vitae. So that forces the players then to go out and feed again, because that's how you regain vitae. All right. So there is, in a real chronicle, there is constant pressure for your players to be feeding and interacting with mortals on that level, because they're spending vitae and they're getting hungry and they're getting thirsty. And the hungrier they get, the more they're going to get quickening, because the beast wants them to, their nature wants them to go out there and feed. But going back to the choose your pain, if they have a painful failure, they lose 3 vitae or they can lose 3 willpower, their choice. They can lose all quickening, which generally has not happened in my game, because my players keep up with their quickening and they use it really quick. No pun intended. But they spend their quickening pretty fast. They don't hold on to it at all. You can mark 1 box on your beast tracker, or you can give your storyteller 1 drama. Okay. More often than not, my players have chosen to either mark off a beast tracker or give me drama. They generally don't have quickening, and they're very stingy with their willpower and their vitae. So, which those are fine options. The more they interact with their humanity tracker, the better. And giving me drama is great. If you play, and remember, you start your game, your chronicle off with the number of drama equal to the number of players you have. So I start my game every time I run this with 4 drama, and 5 I believe is the max. So I've got drama to burn, and I have never, and my players have never felt that they didn't have enough drama. I've never been like, I think I need to spend a drama point to do something and not have it. And generally they're sitting on 1 quickening at least, but they're always spending their quickening and gaining quickenings and things like that. So so make sure you're using these mechanics and building them opportunities into your chronicle for them. Be ready to come up with the devil's bargain. Once per scene, per player proposes a complication to gain a basic success, and they give me drama. So I gain drama from painful failures. I gain drama from devil's bargains. I gain drama for each person at the table. Some NPC abilities you can do, maybe give you drama or whatever, or use drama. But I'm telling you, I've never in the now 12 hours or so that I've ran V6 thus far, have had an issue with running out of drama. And again, if you don't like drama, don't use it. Remember the golden rule. If you don't like something in the World of Darkness rules, don't use it. Okay? There's nothing. I think a lot of people are like feeling like they're pressured to, like, from somewhere. There's this external pressure to run this rules as is in order to give. Maybe the intention is to give a good, thorough review of the rules, and that's admirable. I get that you want to run it just the way it's written so you can find the problems with it. But I think it's more important to run it in your own chronicle, with your own NPCs, your own group. Use what works. Definitely try using all the mechanics at least once in some way, shape, or form. And then if you don't like it, don't use it again. And then do your feedback. So finally, in your chronicle, make sure you have opportunities for your players to interact with some mortals and to indulge their nature. And you can indulge your nature anyways. Like it's you can gain willpower back by either marking nature or beast. It's called riling your nature up. You can do that anyways, but make sure that your players are getting plenty of opportunity to move that, interact with that humanity tracker, and they will if you keep in mind the devil's bargain, the painful failures, the over filling on quickening. If they kill somebody, they're going to get a bunch of beasts. If they break chronicle themes are going to move that tracker around. So there are a lot of ways for your characters to interact with the new humanity mechanics. And I think once they start doing so, they will enjoy it. I know my players have. So, what dog's barking? Ugh. So again, um, just to kind of recap as we're closing up because we've been on here a little bit more than an hour. Um, get your kind of your theme for your chronicle. Get your location, not a huge city, 10, 12 blocks maybe. Focus on that. Focus on some locations within that area. Build your NPCs. You don't have to have 100 of them. Maybe if you're doing like 10 square blocks, 12 square blocks, have 4, maybe 5 kindred NPCs and 2 or 3, maybe 4 mortal NPCs that are important. Shop owners, bar owners, whatever. Um, have some rumors ready, either from those NPCs or from an outside source like a kindred influencer or uh, I've also used on my Discord, I've used like Channel 7 News and put normal stories in there and put some that were kindred based stories but without saying that. So the players have to actually pay attention to the news broadcast and figure out what is important. That's fun for them too. Although that might be more useful on a long running chronicle. The Nightcrawler would probably be better in a short, like 3 or 4 session chronicle because it's something you can do at the very beginning of each game. So then once you've got all that, that first session, have your characters, build the characters, start playing, and start helping you fill out locations in the city, and work with them cooperatively, storytelling where these locations are, why they're important, who's in them, whatever. And then at the end of that first session, if you're only running 2 sessions, introduce an omen and maybe a mild event or something like that, or a minor event. And then in session 2, pick up with them dealing with that event, and then another bit of role playing and dealing with the consequences of that, and then introduce your mild event or whatever. Let them handle that, and at the end, introduce your major event, which is the main arc. Okay, or introduce the main arc in the second session. However you want to do it, you'll feel it out with your players, and you know your players better than anybody. So build something that you know they're going to enjoy. But I encourage you to push them to play outside of the box a little bit and outside of their comfort zone. Um, if you don't have your antagonist, like me, if you don't have your antagonist when you start, you want to have your main antagonist figured out, at least in your own head, by the end of the first session or the beginning of the second session, if you're only playing 2 sessions or 3 sessions. Because you're going to start feeling maybe pressured by the end of that second session if you haven't. Or if you are playing that second session, only 2 sessions, then you may want to have that antagonist figured out by the end of the first session. But that will come by them just interacting with the NPCs. And then in the last session, if you're running 3, I highly suggest 3. I highly suggest like 3 4-hour sessions. Which is nothing. It's 3 weeks of game. Unless you're doing like a con type of thing, like where you're playing one chronicle like that over 2 or 3 nights at a con, which is maybe what I may try to do at Con Carolinas this year. I'll come up with my own game, my own stuff, and then players will be able to start and then continue on the next day or whatever at whatever time. I don't know how that will work. It just popped in my head now. But anyways, make sure you're using all the mechanics we mentioned. Grab your character sheets, make them on Demiplane, print them off here. They'll have everything you need written on it. You can even put a picture on there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. shoot for, I would say, 8 to 12 hours. Um, Make sure that you're familiar with the storyteller's stuff, storyteller's packet, and that you are familiar with the player's packet. You don't have to have it memorized. In fact, like I said, there is a quick reference guide that was put out. I think I saw it on maybe the World of Darkness website, and then I shared it on our Discord for my group. But they've got dice, choose your pain, double bargain, vitae, and it's all broken up into how it works. The next column is quickening, physical conflict, social conflict, and drama. Um, and then the last column is beast and nature and how all that works, willpower and how all that works, and then frenzy. So it's got everything you need to be a great little ST screen. Um, and then after that, after you're done with the Chronicle, either at another meeting or briefly after the game, depending on how long it takes, debrief and find out what the players liked, what they didn't like. What did you like? What didn't you like as a storyteller? And then go and um, give that feedback to White Wolf. You can go to the feedback survey on Demiplane in the World of Darkness Nexus. That is a good place to do it. And give the feedback based on your own chronicle, not on the one that's included. Don't do that, okay? Because you will be disappointed. All right. Well, I hope that everyone has enjoyed our little chat tonight. I may try to play a little bit of Baldur's Gate 2 because, yeah, I kind of got an itching to play it. So I may stream that while I play. I don't know. I may not. But thank you all for watching. Remember, go to check out Demiplane. The World of Darkness Nexus is on there, as is the Vampire 5th Edition Nexus and other Nexuses that you can check out. So you can see I've got something up here in my cart. So I just haven't paid for it yet. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great night. See you later.